Welcome everyone to another episode of Optimal Health for Busy Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Julian Hayes II, back here with another fascinating guest up to some really cool things. I'm sitting here with Avrum Elmakis, virtually, I should say, sitting here. He's a serial entrepreneur, really cool background. He's co-founder, CEO of CLMBR, which is the world's first connected vertical climbing machine with on-demand instructor-led classes. I'm excited to talk about this company and just excited in general to talk about running a business in a pandemic when chaos is all around us. So without further ado, Avrum, how's it going?
Yeah, Julian, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to actually be here, and it's a journey. It's a wild journey. Certainly dealing with all of the pandemic and layering that on top of the challenges that entrepreneurs face just starting any business. But going very well. We're pleased. We're excited about our results thus far, and thrilled to share this innovation with the world.
Awesome to hear. And before we dive into that, let's time travel to the past and let's learn about you as a kid. So what are 1 to 2 lessons from your childhood that has helped shape you into who you are right this very moment?
Yeah, so great question. So my childhood, I'm a first generation American. Both of my parents, my mother was born in South Africa, my father in Morocco. So they stressed education and work ethic. And I think, nothing in my life that has been great came easily. And so, started working when I was 12, 13, and kind of never stopped. And I think that one lesson in that is persistence and hard work does pay off, and helps you achieve goals that you want to set for yourself. And I've always been, I would say the second piece would be, life is a journey of education, and being willing and open to learning more is something that I started at a very young age, whether it was music, whether it was reading books, whether it was, playing different games that I otherwise wouldn't play. And I think, so those are the 2 things that I would speak to from my childhood would be, emphasis on education and openness to learning, and having a really dedicated work ethic.
I'm curious, what was your first job?
First job, non-formal job was mowing all the other neighbors' lawns in our neighborhood for some extra money. And second job was as a dishwasher at a retirement community that was across the street from our neighborhood.
Interesting. So did that, I guess, being around in that retirement community, do you think that kind of helped mold you a little bit as well?
I do, I do. I think it was interesting. It was, I think truth in life comes with age, and being able to really liaise with these folks who had already lived and accomplished most of their life at that point, going into an assisted living community, taught me a lot of different lessons, right? Taught me, just listening to their lives, the value of risk and taking chances. I think that resonates with that population well. And then wanting to help other people. None of the folks that I met with, there wasn't ever a resident that I met with that said, man, I wish I made more money, or I wish I had another car, or I wish I did it was always, not necessarily regret, but reflection on those 2 things, which was, risk, chance, and helping people.
Mm-hmm. And those are all things that an entrepreneur is usually at the top of their list when they're wanting to take this journey into entrepreneurship. So some people know early on that I'm an entrepreneur. It's just in my DNA. Some people, like myself, it comes way later in life, almost by accident. So for you, it seems like you're the latter, whereas it seems to be in your DNA. So where'd you get this entrepreneurial bug at?
I think to your point, that's right. I think, I've always kind of been creatively looking to solve different problems and being willing to apply time, money, effort against that to see what an outcome could look like. Um, Neither of my parents is an entrepreneur. My mother's a social worker, and my father's an engineer. And so they both think I'm crazy, or did. When I left a great corporate America role, to start my first business, but it was always something that just appealed to me to be in control of creating something new, bringing something to life that didn't exist before. And so I think, not to take anything away from anyone else's journey, but for me, it just defines me as a person.
hmm So how'd you get into your first business? What led to that?
Yeah, so and this is a theme that we can talk about. It's a thread
hmm
that runs through all of the different ventures that I do, whether I'm an investor or an operator. But it comes from a need, right? I never really set out to say, "Hey, I want to build X, Y, Z, and now let me figure out how to do it." I think the best businesses, at least in terms of what I see and what I do, are born from kind of a everyday need. And so the first true business that I founded was in the dog treat and chew space. And my wife Lauren and I had some dogs before we had our children, and just didn't find what we were looking for in the market. And so it was that light bulb event to say, okay, I can either accept the reality of what's presented to me and purchase what's there and not change that in any way, or I have an opportunity to do something different and make a run of it. And so, um, very candidly, that was how the first one began.
Do you think there's a time and place to, I guess, when you have entrepreneurs come to you that they're really passionate about a certain topic? Is there a difference in how you kind of introduce that idea to the market to make it a business compared to your way of just finding a need, then creating a business?
I think I think it depends. I think it depends on the business type. I think it depends on what the passions are. I think it depends on the inherent skills and knowledge of the person behind it,
Mhm,
right? In order to be successful, I mean, passion and authenticity, I think, are requirements to be a successful entrepreneur. You have to really believe with every fiber of your soul in what you're doing, if you want other people to share in that belief with you. Um, but that doesn't necessarily translate automatically into a successful business. I
mhm,
think that there's a lot more to running a business than just the spark of passion, if you will.
mhm. And you mentioned being an investor also. What do you look for in a business idea?
I look for, is it helping people? Is it going to change the world? Is it backed by someone with intense passion and belief? Does it have integrity? Is its design to take advantage of people, or to just make money, or to, because there's lots of businesses that I don't think are better for you type of businesses, but they're also very successful companies. So I tend to look at it through a variety of different lenses. Certainly the scalability and the market sizing is one thing that's top of mind when evaluating something. Um, and for me, it's less about the pro formas and what may or may not happen, and more about, how much horsepower is really there to kind of see it through. Um, if that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I hear in that is that there's a lot more emphasis. Yes, the data, yes, the facts, the potential is important, but to me, I hear the humanity of it is first and foremost important.
You have to have that, I think. I mean, I believe, like if I think about my own journey and how does this relate to other people, right? Like I believe that I was able to offer something unique for pet parents out there that was different than, that was better than, that was positive, that was sending good energy out into the world. And a byproduct of that happened to be successful financial,
Mm-hmm.
outcomes. But I think it's important to really think about that, because I think that that's a universal language that humanity understands versus, hey, I want to, I'll give you an example. I would never invest in like a, you know, uh, payday loan type company, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that everyone loses in that situation except the person giving the loan. Um, and so to me, that's while those might be very successful companies and they might be highly profitable, those aren't things that I can kind of get behind, and they're not things that resonate with me in terms of even though they're likely very successful businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And we even had that at the pet company is a great example where we had to do a lot of education with folks around banking, and hey, it's so we can get your check cashed at the bank, and
Mm-hmm.
here's how you do it, and you don't have to pay these exorbitant fees and things like that. So I use that just as an example, but I think there's a way to accomplish it all, and by all I mean doing the right thing, being good, believing in what you're doing, and then also having a financial outcome and building a successful, responsible business around it. I think that that's very doable. And that's what I support and believe in.
Yeah. And so now, as we circle and we come to the present day now, where did this idea of climber come from? It's a machine. It's a machine that I think we talked about before we started recording. That it's in a lot. There's a climbing machine in a lot of gyms, but it's an afterthought for most of us.
Yeah, I think I think very much that way, right? Like
Hmm.
I started working out. I got into triathlons. I started doing a lot of cycling and running and swimming, and dealing with lots of different types of modalities and exercise equipment. And then it wasn't until we moved from Virginia to Denver that I was really in the vein of, hey, let me get into the kind of the fitness business, if you will, and try to provide something that's just unique and different and better than. And so, again, very much like the pet company, I met and found a local gym here that was using kind of the older version, if you will, the kind of existing paradigm of climbing devices, and realized very quickly, wow, this is efficient, it's safe, it works, it's got so much potential, yet no one ever sees it, no one ever uses it. It's to your point, it's an afterthought, and there's so many reasons for that. But how do I take that, right, that pure primal movement, and introduce that or reintroduce that to the market in a way that is a great form factor and approachable and modern and has metrics that are important to users and all of those different things. So that's what prompted that journey.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's been a big success so far. At least I think so. Just judging by the numbers that I
Mm-hmm.
looked at this morning. So, what has been successful in kind of introducing something that's not common to the everyday fitness person? Because, and I ask this because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who may have difficulty communicating the benefits of their products and services.
Yeah, I think this is going to go back to another very important piece when we're talking about entrepreneurship and the journey of entrepreneurism. I think it really revolves around authenticity and the truth. And I think when those two things are front and center, the rest of it kind of falls into place, right? So very analogous back again to the pet company, because it's easy to turn around a package and say, okay, well, why is there green 46, red 31, this ingredient, that ingredient? Why, right? And so the easiest thing I can say in terms of how do you share this is, if it is in fact true, then it's incumbent on the entrepreneur to figure out, is that through celebrity? Is that through sports and entertainment? Is that through the medical community? How do we really re-educate people on the paradigm or the choices that they're offered, right? And when I looked at the market and I said, wow, the choices that I'm being offered as a consumer revolve around three main things. They revolve in cardio around bicycles, treadmills, and rowers. And having used all of that equipment, I realized very quickly, wow, that's not a good argument. So how do I, in 2013, I got my first standing desk. This is the easiest way I relate things to people. And I think we can all agree that it's healthy to stand while we work rather than sit down for really long periods of time. And so for me, the light bulb was, well, why would I leave my office where I've got a standing desk to then go sit down on a piece of stationary equipment to work out and exercise? It just doesn't make any sense, right? It's not authentic. And so it was that kind of light bulb moment mixed with just the efficiency of it. Like I, like most people, have limitations of time. We all do. We all are limited by time equally and ratably. And if I'm able to say, hey, I can accomplish the same thing as I would on a bicycle in half the time, would other people share in this journey and join me on this, on this mission to kind of revolutionize the way we think about choice when we think about modality, right? Forget about equipment for a minute. I'm just talking about human movement, right? Humanity. We all are born, we all crawl. That is the most efficient primal movement that we have. We all start the exact same way. And by taking that primal movement and standing it up, I think what we've accomplished is the truth and authentic. And I think that those two things are the key. And that shines bright, right? And it's lovely and it's amazing to have all of these incredible scientists and medical professionals and surgeons and professional athletes and entertainers, kind of join me to really re-educate people around their options, their choices. And then at least armed with information, they can really actually deduce for themselves, hey, does it make sense for me to sit down on something with wheels and use momentum and hunch over? Or does it make sense for me to be upright and kind of engage my whole body? There's no judgment involved. It's just giving proper optionality and education and choice. And so hopefully that is a long-winded, roundabout way to answer, that question.
I liked it. That was very detailed though, and I like that because a lot of times it's not just a very simple black and white thing. There's nuances and layers to a lot of these things. It's in business, entrepreneurship, and even just with our personal health. So, but speaking of getting a medical team on board, getting influencers and celebrities also I noticed that you have Jay-Z as an investor. There's been Pitbull, Novak Djokovic, and a few more people. How did you I guess get them on board with this initiative, this product?
So the first lens is it's something that they were familiar with and that they use in
Hmm.
their training. If they're an entertainer, that job is like a professional athlete. You're
Hmm.
on stage, you're day in and day out, you're traveling, you're dancing, you're moving, and your body is a very important part of your journey. As an athlete, it's the exact same thing. And so I think that the common thread amongst all those folks is a knowledge of the modality and that it's better than and that they've used it. Um, and, just the authenticity piece, right? Like if I'm an athlete and I'm, looking at my body as something that I want to preserve, right? Throughout
Hmm.
to be able to use my body as a tool for as long as I can, I'm looking for things that are less impact than more impact. I'm looking for things that are efficient because I have little time for different exercises throughout my day. And so that was, I think, the key. In terms of connectivity to those folks, I think it was a combination of them reaching out organically, along with our board. We have a very talented board of directors who is connected to some of these various folks. And it's just, we've just shared the tip of the iceberg, if you will, of who's involved in Climber and the why behind it. But the key piece, and I'll just say it again, is always the authenticity.
Hmm.
It's not that, I would never, want somebody to endorse or invest in my company or my product that didn't share the same belief system as me that, hey, we have the power, we have this unique ability to change the way the world thinks. And so the fabric that's woven, we can kind of pull that apart a little bit and reweave it so that we can, really share this, with people. Because we do believe at the end of the day, this is just better than in so many different ways.
Hmm. Yeah, and we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and
Mm-hmm.
you're building this business, and it's not the first time that you've built a business in a recession and with chaos around. So I guess what unique things have allowed you to be successful during those types of times?
I think that whether, when I think to the pet business, which was my first real commercial success, if you will, that was in a financial recession in '07 is when I really started that company.
Hmm.
And today's world of this pandemic is, financial impact, health impact, whatever. I think something very interesting happens to the world as those things are happening, and it causes more internal reflection. It causes a desire for knowledge, and a pullback from necessarily going out to dinner every night or whatever, and more focus at home. Like, hey, I want to be at home, I want to be around my pets more. I might have lost my job, but I want to focus on my health and those trends of natural, healthy eating and all of those things are really starting to take off in '07, '08. And therefore, I want to think about that for my extended family. And in many cases, that's people's dogs, cats, or whatever, companion animals they have. I think in today's world, it's how do I optimize as a person, right? Now that I don't have the luxuries of all of this distraction around me, right, if you will. And so I think very analogous thinking between the two, and not planned, right? Nobody can plan for a global financial recession. Nobody can plan for a global pandemic. But I think people are really thinking more about their health, about their wellness, about their fitness, about their time. And almost redefining themselves through this crisis. And so no intention of timing things in these cycles, they just happen, right? And I think that's another piece of the entrepreneurship journey. There's not really luck as I see it, but there is timing, right? And if you're able to have timing mixed with an authentic product or idea and vision, mixed with good capitalization and all those things, then you've built a recipe for a business that has the potential to succeed. So I think, we hear from customers every day, and they're excited, right? They're excited to take control of their health. They're excited about a movement that's self-regulating, right? So if you don't move, the machine doesn't move. They're excited about something that has no impact associated with it. And they're hungry, right? They're hungry for information. There's, they want knowledge, and they're looking for change. And I think it's this beautiful thing where it's super positive, whether it's a professional athlete or somebody who's recovering from a stroke or a heart attack. It's this kind of universally good modality that we seek to change the world with.
Yeah. So coming from the outside in, since you haven't just been predominantly in the health and fitness industry your whole time, what do you see in the health and fitness industry that could use improvement?
I think it's an industry that, has focused for many, many years on the same things, right? Like, at least my perception as an external party to it has always been like, okay, we got a bike with a screen on it. We got another bike with a screen on it. This bike goes side to side. This treadmill goes up and down. But I felt like there was an opportunity to disrupt all of that, right? And I think, that's another kind of hallmark of what I like to do as I build these businesses, is kind of look for things that are maybe a little bit older world in the way that they think, right, as an industry, and kind of challenge that. And so while there is just tremendous innovation, right, with now resistance training at home, with the various options there, and even in the cardio side too, I think that there was an opportunity for a new company to come in and kind of shake things up, if you will, and say, well, wait a minute, here's an entirely different way to look at things.
Yeah. So speaking on just the current times that we're in now, with all this uncertainty around, how are you advising entrepreneurs to stay mentally and emotionally sane and locked in in the business with so much going on around them?
Yeah, extremely hard to do. But I think the keys to success there are in believing in yourself, right? Really reinforcing those beliefs to yourself on a regular basis, because it's easy to allow negative thoughts, whether they be internally, they're bubbling up inside of us, or they're externally, oh, you'll never make it, or whatever. There's always that pressure. So it's positive reinforcement. It's having a plan, right, and sticking to it. It's saying, okay, I'm going to meditate every day, right? So that's my mental health. I'm going to move every day, and that could be a walk around the block, or cardio at home, or weight training with friends, or what have you. But I think it's important to have a plan. I think it's important to stay positive, and just motivated, and just work hard, and keep your head down, and not let all of those things kind of pull you away from what you set out to do. And so a lot of times I'll speak about focus, right? And I think with focus comes great, success, power, whatever you want to call it. And allowing yourself to not be distracted by, this over here or that over there or this over
Mhm.
here. And you see that a lot. I do, at least, in especially first time entrepreneurs, because it's so easy to get distracted and off course. And then you look up and you're like, well, where are we? And how did we get here?
Mhm. Very much so. Speaking of entrepreneurs taking care of themselves, let's dive into some of your routines and well-being, and how do you take care of yourself? So, yeah, how do you take care of yourself? What's like your fitness routine, your health routine, productivity, etc.?
Yeah, so it varies all the time, right? I am far from perfect
Hmm.
in terms of what I aspire to be in terms of optimal health and wellness.
Hmm.
But I try to meditate on a regular basis. I try to move every day. It's fine to do a walking meeting or a walking, call or whatever. I try to eat, healthily. I try to get lots of rest. Um, I do a lot of Epsom salt baths and things like that, just to kind of de-stress at the end of a long day or week. Um, I like to do things outside. Like I like to get fitness as part of an activity. So for instance, ski. So in the winters in Colorado, there's a lot of winter sports activities available. So, that's an example of something where, you just kind of go out, you're connected with nature. You're very socially distant at that, when you're on the mountain. Um, and so it varies, but not every day is the same. But I think, I think I consciously think about it on a regular basis. And then I have a pretty good practice of reflecting on each day, the events of that day, how I'm feeling, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and just checking in, to say, hey, you're off here, you're good
Hmm.
there, and then recrafting what tomorrow will bring.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest obstacle for entrepreneurs and their health? What do you think is the biggest struggle for them?
The biggest struggle for entrepreneurs, I would say it's two things. It's one, it's time, right?
Hmm.
And time management and being able to say no, and focus. And I think the second thing, and finding time, right? You have to find time to move. You have to find time to take care of yourself. You have to find time to read a book, and learn. And so I think it's discipline to be able to find time. I think that's one important thing. And then I think from a mental standpoint, I think there's just a tremendous amount of stress involved in starting a business and leading people and seeing a vision and raising money and
Hmm.
and all of those things. And I think it's just a lot of times it's easy to not take care of the mind. And it's so critical. It's so critical.
I agree. And speaking of vision, you mentioned vision. What's the future hold for Climber? Where do you see it going?
It's exciting. We're at the beginning. So you're talking to me at the beginning of the
Hmm.
journey. I would,
This is cool.
I love
This
the,
is cool to see.
yeah, I love the, I had a great conversation with a friend the other night, and I said, the things that I'm really good at, right? The things that I understand that I'm good at are really vision and strategy, right?
Hmm.
And I think the vision for Climber is, having a worldwide product that, gets more people moving, that gets people off the sidelines, whether they have back pain or knee pain or whatever, and gives options to people that are that are looking for something that's efficient. And I think that that's you know, tens and hundreds of thousands of units all over the world, building this incredibly connected community, which is all aspiring towards becoming a better version of themselves in whatever that means to that person, right? So even if I've had a stroke and I'm learning how to move again, that one movement for that person
Hmm.
is magic, right? And so, you know, it brings me great joy, and it probably brings almost every entrepreneur great joy to see people validating, you know, their mission and their vision. And so, you know, I hope to see it in many different gym facilities in the commercial environment. I'm one of these folks that believes that people need to be around other people at times, maybe not all the time, but I
Hmm.
believe in a collective human energy. Um, and you know, so I see it, and I see it a lot, you know, appearing in people's homes as either an adjunct to what they already have, or maybe it's the one thing that they use to get on, to get started, to get back on track, for wherever they are in their own personal fitness, wellness, health journey.
Yeah, I look forward to this coming to fruition over the years. You know, I guess, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I had this conversation at the very beginning, and look, you know, so but yeah, so as we wrap this conversation up, let's do a few random questions here. So,
Sure.
what are 2 to 3 books that have had a major impact on your life?
Wow. 2 to 3 books that have had a major impact on my life. Gosh, there are so many. Um, mm, it's hard to like, you know, specifically call out, you know, one or two. Let me focus mainly on different authors, right?
Okay.
Because I think they tend to be thematic in what they do.
Hmm.
But I love Gladwell, you
Hmm.
know, and all of his books, whether it be Outliers or kind of any of those things, because I think it looks at, you know, it's kind of a case-based perspective, whether it be businesses or societal events or whatever. For me, those are very interesting. I love, you know, I'm just trying to think of all of these different books because I'm in the middle of one right now, but it's fiction. I just enjoy reading in general. You know, Thinking Fast and Slow, I thought was a great
Oh
book.
yeah, that is a good book.
Um, you know, I'm just trying to think out loud here. I've got a lot of different philosophy books that I reference and read a lot. Um, you know, I think, but it's hard for me to just say off the top of my head. It's great though that it's a random question to say these are the two that I recommend you read. You know, per se.
Hmm. Yeah. So philosophy books. What's the first one that comes off the top of your head right now that you're thinking?
Yeah, so first one that comes off the top of my head is Governing Business and Relationships
Okay.
and that's by Swami Parthasarathi, who's a philosopher based in India that I had the luxury of studying with. And just really talks about attachments, right? And kind of the virus of attachment, and kind of, you know, finding something and being attached to it, and then all of your thoughts going there, and kind of, you know, how one kind of thinks about governing a business, how one thinks about governing their life, whether it be a relationship with your children. I'm the proud father of 4 daughters. Governing the relationship between a husband and a spouse. So that's one that I reference frequently.
You know, when you mention attachment, that's so critical, and it's probably something that you know now, being an experienced entrepreneur. But I just think back to myself and probably a lot of new entrepreneurs is that you can get really attached to like a certain result happening or doing a certain activity and needing a certain result to happen, and just having your whole mood be based on that.
hmm And I think I mean, as you're saying, right, you can flow a lot of negative or positive energy to that, and it
Hmm.
might not be the right thing. So it's at least worthy of self-consideration and saying, hey, am I overly attached to this,
Hmm.
right? And am I not, right? And so, but it's a very self um, driven exploration, right? Because we tend to surround ourselves with people that want, tell us what we're expecting and wanting to hear.
Hmm.
And that can always very easily lead towards, fueling that attachment
Hmm.
to whatever outcome it may be, or business idea, and that it's the right
Hmm.
thing. And so I think I just think there's a lot in in philosophy to kind of apply to business.
Very much so. And the next question is, who's in your all-time musical starting five? And this could be, they could be dead or alive, solo or
Yeah.
group. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, I've got to send a shout out. I love Jay-Z. I
Uh,
think he's an
uh-huh.
incredible hip hop um, artist. I love the Roots. They're an incredible band, and I listen to them on a regular basis. I love Rufus Du Sol, which is a more electronic vibe. Um, Two others. I'll go in a completely different direction and throw out Itzhak Perlman. I grew up playing the viola for many years and have a fondness and affinity towards string instruments. So, in my opinion, he's a brilliant violinist, and so I'll listen to him. And then in the number five spot, I think you know. Like a easy listening band like Train is
Hmm.
a great example of musical top five off the top of my head.
All righty. And the next thing is, pretend you have a bottle of wine or coffee, tea, whatever your drink, your preference of drink is, and it's a round table. There's three seats there, and who would you invite for this round table discussion? And throughout history, they can be dead or alive, but it has to exclude family. So who's getting the invitations?
Okay, who's getting the invitations? Mm, this is a tricky one. Dead or alive. So I'll go with one alive, Elon Musk. I think he's just a very interesting, visionary business person that I would love to just learn more about. I believe and use his product. I believe in Tesla and kind
Mm-hmm.
of use that product on a daily basis and love it. Um, I would say, um, I would say, maybe Gandhi.
Mm-hmm.
I think a very different, philosophical approach to life and kind of journey through life. And then I'm just trying to think because these are, obviously unrehearsed for the moment.
Yeah.
I would say, um, gosh, so hard. Um, huh. I would say Lincoln.
Lincoln.
I
Okay.
would be curious to see like what his perspectives were given where he was and in his point in time and kind of how he was able to do what he did.
Mhm.
So off the top of my head, those three.
Yeah, those three are actually known for having vision. That's one of the key words. And then throughout this conversation, vision, authenticity has been two themes that you come back to, just like those three people you mentioned. So, I like this question, and I tell a guest this every time, is that you can kind of, it's the people that they name matches up oftentimes with our discussion and the things
Mm-hmm.
that really fuel them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but so the last question here is, someone comes up and taps you on the shoulder. we're back to normal. We're not afraid to touch each other on the shoulder anymore.
Yeah.
They're tapping you on the shoulder. And this guy asked you, what are 3 things that I can do today to start becoming a superhuman entrepreneur? What would you tell him?
Wow, what are 3 things that I can do today to become a superhuman entrepreneur? I would say the first thing is a good meditative practice, right? In whatever way that means for that person, because there's so many different ways and tools and ways to connect with yourself, but just finding silence for 20 minutes a day, I would say is something that I would recommend to anyone. The second thing I would say is to take stock of, the people around you, and make sure that those are people that, are supporting you, that are believing in you, that are good influences, right? Making sure that you're traveling in a group of other like-minded individuals that, are positive and not, taking you down. So just taking stock of your interpersonal relationships and making sure that those are productive and positive and meaningful. And the third thing I would say is, it's just, dedication, right? Persistence, right? Nothing takes the place of persistence, nothing that I've found in my journey thus far. And so, if you think you're working hard, that you've got a little bit left in the tank. And when you're there, then you've got a little bit left in the tank. And it's just, making sure that you're honest with yourself, that your effort is equal to 100%, right? And it's not anything that somebody can externally tell you if you're doing a good job or not. It's known only to you. And so I would say dedication and persistence.
I like that. Sounds like my conversation that I had with myself yesterday when I was on my run. It's like, oh, you're tired now. You're just getting started. Keep going.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So yeah. I love that. And I've loved this conversation here. Where can listeners find out more about you and Climber? Where can they go to?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So, would love the listeners to go to climber.com. It's no vowels, CLMBR.com. And then I've got a LinkedIn, which is just LinkedIn/Avrum, AVRUM, and people can kind of check in on me there. But certainly appreciate folks, comments, criticisms, whatever, to help us get better on this journey.
Awesome to hear. And I'll have that in the show notes. Avrum, thank you so much for joining me. And listeners, stay awesome, be limitless, and go be superhuman. Peace.